And welcome back to another episode of Lost It Down, a member of Bruiser Nation Podcast Network, a division of Snapmare Productions. I can't talk, David. This is the third entrance into the show, and I cannot get it out of my mouth right now. It is a David and Wally episode. Steven is recovering from the Butson's wedding, which we will talk about at some point. But David, man, you're going to have to just fight through this one with me. I am just hanging on by a thread, but how are we doing, buddy?
Buddy, I was totally ready to intro us if you were going to start over for a fourth time and have it be the first time ever that I intro into the podcast.
Well, you know what? The way this is going, we might just have you do it yourself in 3 minutes. You might just do your own podcast. But
the people don't want that.
I don't know. I'd have fun listening back and editing that guy. But Steven, like I said, not here. He was actually celebrating with the Butsons this last weekend. They are now happily married. Abby Turner is no more, but Abby Turner Creative, don't mind. That's still going to be there. We got to keep the naming rights. You know what I'm talking about. But that's fantastic news. I'm so thrilled that they got to go out there. And the other thing, David, is this is State Fair week. It's now officially over up here in Wisconsin. I know you remember how crazy these things are, and
how much meat and cheese and beer did Dad take home?
Too much. So I have pictures. I need to actually get the dollar amount so we can hit our over-unders or not. But it was enough where I basically have a college man's fridge up here right now where I'm just like, hey, I'm by myself. The fewer options I have, you're also a man of substance. We got a little extra poundage on us. So the fewer options that I have, the more likely it is that I'm going to stick to my diet, eat right, work out. So naturally, here we are 24 hours removed from my family's exit, and I've got like a freaking meat locker. I've got beer out the wazoo, and there's cheese. Like cheese is literally coming out of my pores when I sweat. So I just got to fight through this fridge right now.
It's going to be great. You just go on a temporary keto diet where you're just eating all that meat and vegetables and, hit it hard. I don't know what else to tell you. It sounds like a great thing to have.
It's a great thing to have until you're done eating and you hate your life, because I can't control myself. This is great food. I know my dad makes fantastic buttered chicken. They brought naan up with them. And I think that I think that if you took my blood right now, like the way alcohol, you have your BAC, I think that I'm like a 10th of buttered chicken at this point.
I'm jealous, brother. That sounds delightful.
It's a good problem to have, but all of a sudden now I got to work out extra hard next week to get all this shit off me again. But David, we'll jump right into the NFL news. We have our first preseason week under our belts. So we have to start with takeaways, and I figured what better way as a Raiders fan than to start with the Raiders. So I'm going to throw this out there before I hear some of your own thoughts. I know the Browns played the Packers, didn't look great, but again, it's preseason. It's really hard to weigh what matters and what doesn't. But for the Raiders, for me, we were talking about it a little before. It's not about whether you win or lose in preseason. It's really not even I'm not going to get excited about Aiden O'Connell being the best preseason quarterback of all time. What I'm excited about is that we get to see Brock Bowers in this offense, and it looks like a lot of two tight end sets. So you had 12 snaps from Michael Mayer. You had 11 from Bowers, but this is what excited me. They had a 15-play opening drive touchdown. Bauer played 4 snaps at tight end, 3 out wide, 1 in the slot, and 3 from the backfield. So I'm at least encouraged that this is going to be a very physical offense, that this is going to be an Antonio Pierce identity kind of team, a kind of a philosophy there. And we got Brock Bowers, man. I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid and just tell myself he's the next Travis Kelce, because Lord knows I need to have some hope.
I love that for you.
That's all I can ask for.
My hope for the Browns is my only takeaway for the Browns, which is extended playing time for Mike Hall Jr. And he didn't do a whole lot, but he's a rookie, so it's his first game. I didn't expect a whole lot, but what was interesting to see is the Browns used him like they used Myles Garrett, which is multiple positions, multiple fronts, mostly on, focused on passing, how do I want to say this? Attacking the passer on pass plays. it was interesting to see how they look at him, which is a really athletic and, you know, utility tool defensive lineman, which is incredible for the Browns if he ends up being as good as, you know, some of the videos from training camp look.
You just said it. I'm glad that you brought up the videos from training camp. That one where they're trying to get them off the ball as fast as they can. He's playing right next to Myles Garrett. And the fact that Myles Garrett and him, it felt like had the same get off. If not the same, it was fractionally different. That's exciting because you can learn or teach yourself a lot of this stuff, especially on either offense or defensive line. You get better. It's one of the positions that you do consistently improve. That's all that you got to be excited about. You're like, dude, this guy's a freak athlete. He obviously has a huge motor. So
you can't teach that quickness
slow,
either. I mean, you can get a little bit better, but you can't teach that like natural instinct, reactive, like split second nature.
Completely agree. And I guess the other thing we can't tell because it's preseason, but it sounds like Jameis Winston has looked really good in training camp. And we all know how rational AFC North fans are. So if we see Watson start slow, is it going to be like October 1st before we start hearing that Jameis Winston should be our starter in Cleveland?
It might not even be to the first game of the season. So we're clear.
you might be right. And that's it. That was almost my concern when you bring in a backup like Jameis Winston. If you were going to go all in on Deshaun Watson, give him a one real shot here, then I kind of, you don't want to ever be weaker at a position. But at the same point, it's like what you see in Pittsburgh with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. That is going to be a talking point in that local media the entire season. I can't imagine that's good for a locker room. So, in a weird way, you almost wish you had a Case Keenum instead of a Jameis Winston.
You know, speaking of Justin Fields, though, my only other takeaway, I promise it's the last one because I didn't watch every single preseason game. You know, guilty me. As I saw a stat coming out of that Chicago game that Caleb Williams, although he played decently well, had a slower time to throw than Justin Fields' worst average all of last season, which is peculiar, right? Like, because that hurts you in the NFL. The longer you hold the ball, the worse you're going to play every single time as a quarterback.
The only, I guess, thought, if I'm trying to rationalize it, and I'm a Justin Fields like stan, so I'm like hoping that he figures it out, even though I think that ship might be sailed. I will say, though, this is Caleb Williams' first start in the NFL. This is his first reps, first not his practice in a game setting. And he threw it 7 times. I don't even know if it was that many. So it's like, well, we're using, so we're using 7 or 8 passes versus 3 years of bodied work. So that, I guess, is if I'm a Caleb Williams or a Chicago Bears fan,
but
I'm not worried yet.
We talked about it last season, though. It's not really 3 years of work because Justin Fields got slower and slower and slower every year he was with Chicago. It's like they made him a worse player.
And maybe it was the Luke Getsy Chicago Bears that were doing it, but there's also a chance that he kind of just got in his own head. We've seen players get the yips. We've seen players break before. And you can almost blame Justin Fields' lack of confidence in his own abilities as much as anything else for getting worse every year. But my last takeaway for you, too, I'm going to stay in the AFC North, going back anyways. So Joe Burrow looked like Joe Burrow. We had been worried about his wrist strength, figure out whether or not he would actually be the same guy coming back. And this, again, is a preseason game. We're talking about one single drive. But Joe Burrow looked like Joe Burrow, and I think even more encouraging for Bengals fans is that he wasn't pressured, he wasn't hit. And part of that is because rookie offensive tackle Amarius Mims looked the part this last weekend. I know he suffered a pec injury. It sounds like he might miss the rest of preseason, and that sucks. But it's a lot better that it's Amarius Mims this preseason getting hurt than Joe Burrow. So at least if I'm a Bengals fan, plus they had the orange pants unveiled today. I don't know if you've seen them yet. But this is an exciting time for Bengals fans, especially given that it's probably T. Higgins' last year in Cincinnati.
And you've got the real Slim Shady playing quarterback.
That's true. Maybe that's all it took. You just have Stan back there at quarterback now, so we're good.
Mm-hmm.
But the Browns unveil new stadium renderings for a potential plan to move the team from downtown for a $2.4 billion dome in Brooks Park, I believe is correct, right, David?
Brooks Park.
Yeah, there we go. I'm like, it's one of them. It's like little areas, probably 20 minutes outside of the city. So this would move you from downtown Cleveland for the first time in team history. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I got a lot of mixed
You're
feelings.
like 5 minutes from the airport.
Okay.
Like it is about 20 minutes away from downtown. You're dead on, but you're probably 5 minutes from Cleveland Airport.
But what do you think about this? Let's say that it happens, because we know that it's not like official yet, but let's say this does happen. As a Browns fan in the city of Cleveland, how do you feel about this?
Look, there's two sides of this, right? The first side is I love the new stadium renderings. I love the idea of building around it with restaurants and shops and stuff like that. It's a very similar idea to what the Milwaukee Bucks did with their stadium in Milwaukee, which had a lot of shops and a lot of stuff put in around it. And if you can make it successful, that's great. And I would appreciate saving an hour leaving Cleveland, because the only way to get into that stadium is coming through 90, and it's a nightmare through and through. But I won't bitch too much. But on the flip side, I hear a lot of people are saying, yeah, you got to do this because it's just wasted lakefront with the stadium now. It's like, if the stadium leaves, nothing's going to go there that's going to make people go to that lakefront. All right. Like there's nothing they can replace it with. Like, what are you going to put? You're going to put shops
It's a
down
marina,
there?
right? Like, that's the thing I keep thinking about or hearing about anyways.
You're going to put shops down there or bars maybe. But if you look at the flats now, post-COVID, the flats only feel like the flats on a warm summer day when everyone can be outside. Otherwise, it feels kind of dead the last couple times I've been out. Right. And don't get me wrong, I moved from Cleveland 2 years ago. Maybe I'm way off, right? Maybe it's just the times I've been down there. But you've got stuff in downtown Cleveland, but it's not busy unless there's a sporting event or a concert or it's a 90-degree day. So the Browns leaving that stadium just makes that land utterly useless in my mind. And again, maybe I'm crazy, but it just doesn't seem like a reason to. I'd rather the Browns play in, Ohio State Stadium for a year and knock down First Energy and rebuild this stadium right on that plot of land than move to Brook Park.
And I understand why they're doing this. I do. I understand it. But I'm miserable at the fact that they won't be downtown. I'll miss the Muni lot. I'll miss the weather games. And I feel for the bars that are going to lose the revenue downtown. It just kind of feels like a certain part of football is being removed that we're never going to see again. Removing weather games, it's inevitable. And it's going to be for player safety. But it doesn't mean I'm going to like it. It doesn't mean I'm not going to go kicking and screaming into the cold night. The Browns need to be outside. They need to be on the lake. Give me those ugly snow games. It's just, again, between this and Buffalo,
if they do the parking right, the Muni lot could be ×2 in Brook Park. But to your point, the bars if you go to a Browns game, or for anyone listening, if you've ever been to a Browns game before, it doesn't matter where you park. You park and you end up walking by a whole bunch of bars and restaurants on your way to the stadium, because there's no real parking close to the stadium outside the Muni lot. So all those businesses, like your map rooms, your I forget some of the bars that are just like exclusively busy on game days, but like some of those bars are always going to be busy regardless of if it's Browns crowd or not. But like some of those bars are going to take a brutal hit on football season Sundays. Probably not be able to be open for a really long time. Whereas, if they keep it downtown, it's the same people showing up to tailgate in those bars rather than in the Muni lot.
I guess the moral of the story is enjoy the games at First Energy this next few years if you're from Cleveland, because it sounds like those days are numbered. At least outdoor games are numbered.
When is it's up in 2028? Is that do I have that right?
I think it's 2028. I know we got probably 4-ish years of outdoor games left, and I'm going to enjoy each and every one of them. Haasan Reddick requested a trade today, and Joe Douglas and the Jets quickly put the kibosh to that. Listen to this statement Joe Douglas said in response to Haasan Reddick's trade request. We have informed Haasan that we will not trade him, that he is expected to be here with his teammates, and that he will continue to be fined per the CBA if he does not report. Since the trade discussions back in March, we have been clear, direct, and consistent with our position. Our focus will remain on the guys we have here as we prepare for the regular season. What in the world? Why can't it feels like wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, it's got nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers, but I'm still going to point that out. Wherever he goes, it just feels like there's a circus around it. Like the Jets have been a nonstop media circus for the last 15 months, and Haasan Reddick hasn't even played a snap in New York, and he's already miserable. He's already causing headaches, and this comes on the heels of them moving off of Bryce Huff because they're like, we need an established veteran. And now it sounds like there's no chance that they at least are happy with each other in this year. I feel bad. I actually feel bad for Jets fans. That's crazy to say, but I do.
I feel bad for Reddick almost, because if the Jets aren't going to play ball and they're also going to do what they're doing now, which is basically come out and say, kick rocks, you can show up or we'll take your money. Why keep him there? Even if he shows up, he's not going to want to be there. It's going to be uncomfortable in the locker room. You've got a cancer, and this time suddenly it's not Aaron Rodgers somehow, some way. But why? Just trade him. Just get him out of there. And do you really need him? And if you do need him, pay him. You got two great options. He's a great player. Pay him or trade him. Don't make these stupid statements. They should have traded him 2 months ago if they knew they weren't going to pay him. And frankly, to Joe Douglas, you are literally all in on one season of Aaron Rodgers this year. Maybe two. Maybe another one. But you're all in. Just pay him. You're going to be screwed if you don't win a Super Bowl this year. So why not have a great team that could win 9 or 10 games without a phenomenal quarterback, because you built this incredible roster? You know what I'm saying? Just pay the guy.
For me, the problem starts with the fact that you traded for a guy that you knew wanted an extension and you knew you weren't going to give it to him. You couldn't, after you got him, because of the time of year, they didn't go and get anybody in the draft. I mean, let me rephrase that. They got, the kid from Iowa State, Will McDonald. But you still were hoping that you had Haasan Reddick to help groom him. And now, if you trade him, you would be depending fully on a rookie who's probably not going to get that many snaps in year one. So they kind of put themselves up against the wall. So you can't really move him at this stage and get a good edge. So, yeah, I guess you either have to pay him or you're going to play Russian roulette with Haasan Reddick and depend that he's not going to do the Le'Veon Bell thing. And I don't think he will. I mean, who's going to forfeit a year of their prime when he has a big money deal on the horizon in March when he can test the open market? I think if anything, you're going to see a Chris Jones-like holdout that resolves itself in September or October. But it's going to be an uncomfortable season. No one's going to be happy. And when you have a bad culture, it's the same if it's a desk job. It's the same if you are working at a gas station. You need good culture to get the best results. And anything but a good culture has been cultivated with Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and the Jets. And I'd been defending those two forever. But at some point, man, something's got to change. And I just don't see it happening. But we want to remind you guys that this week's show is brought to you by Abby Turner Creative, your one-stop shop marketing agency specializing in branding, high-end photography, fashion, and more, especially if you are around our age where there's college graduations, engagements, weddings, let's go, baby pictures, you name it. Feels like they are happening every weekend. Abby Turner Creative is the only way to go. Check her out for yourself at abbyturnerphoto.com. That's Abby, A-B-B-E-Y, or on our Instagram page at SawDad in Sapphire. Again, abbyturnerphoto.com. Man, mush mouth. Brutal. But you hear these freaking sirens going off because they're going to come save me and put me in a home. But before that happens, let's talk a little bit about some retirements. Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles announced his retirement this last week. David, one of the most unlikely heroes ever. What were your thoughts when you saw this?
I mean, he probably retired at the right time. Here's the thing. Nick Foles is forever like locked in history being the most unlikely player to have an incredible playoff run and Super Bowl victory and MVP and what have you. And God, didn't he, if I recall correctly, he also had an incredible rookie season where he threw like, what, 6 touchdowns or 7 touchdowns in a game? You're on mute.
Oh, shoot. If it's a year I think you're referring to, his second year, he had 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And everybody's like...
Was it the second year?
I think so. I think he was a backup the first year. He never amassed more than 3,000 yards on a season.
God, what a legend.
I know.
He's got the perfect quarterback career for a guy who's going to be able to talk fully when he's 60 years old.
Alex Moran has posters of Nick Foles on his wall.
Facts.
But you said it, but unlikely is the word here because he's perhaps the most unlikely Super Bowl MVP ever, perhaps the most unlikely Super Bowl hero of all time. He delivered the first Super Bowl in in Philadelphia's history, and that's going to forever cement him in NFL history on that alone. But then you factor in how unexpected that run of excellence we saw in that postseason from him was. He only played 6 games that year. And that Super Bowl run, he averaged over 320 yards a game in the playoffs with 6 touchdowns and 1 pick, not to mention one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history to beat Tom Brady. What an incredible ride, and we'll never forget Nick Foles' name, which that's what we're fighting for at the end of the day, right? Jerry Jones says he has no urgency to get a CeeDee Lamb contract done. The wide receiver then quote tweeted that and said, LOL. It's one thing to not want to play ball with a player seeking to renegotiate a contract, and it's an entirely different to publicly admit that it's not a priority to re-sign one of the best players on your entire franchise, the face of the franchise, especially when you have a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who's in the last year of his deal. And here's the thing, David. This isn't the first time Jerry Jones has put his foot in his mouth this offseason. I mean, it's one of a billion of all time for him. But he's also tipped the Cowboys looking to draft Jonathan Brooks. I'm not sure if this is old man brain or if Jerry has just gotten too loose-lipped. But either way, I think that's a major concern in Big D.
This is so par for the course for the Cowboys. Jerry Jones hinders them always. He just can't get out of the team's way. And to your point, it's one thing to not want to play ball, but you've got widely regarded one of the best receivers in the NFL. Maybe not top 3, but arguably top 5, probably top 7. And you guys can hammer me at home if you heavily disagree, but like,
I think there's a case to be made he's top 3.
Yeah, you can make the argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got one of the top receivers in the NFL, and it's really the only bright spot on your whole team, like future-wise bright spot. And that may be another hot take, but in my opinion, that is, like you said, the face of your franchise, because it's not your quarterback, and it's what gets your fans excited. So to come out and to disrespect the receiver or disrespect the guy and say, I got no urgency to make a deal with you. In my head, if I were CeeDee Lamb, I'd be like, I got no urgency to make plays for you. That's such a outrageous comment to make to the media that it's Jerry Jones getting in the way again.
It would piss me off so much because, again, say that behind closed doors, and I'm already going to still be a little upset to openly say I'm not worried about signing one of the best players in football when it's quite clear that it feels like Dak is probably in his last year with the team. What incentive do I have if I'm CeeDee Lamb to play ball with them? So, I mean, he'll play.
Why would you want to stay? Why would you want to stay in Dallas?
That's
You
what I
know,
mean. That's what I was just saying. I think he'll play just because why again in your prime are you going to miss a year and Le'Veon Bell yourself? But he's going to want out, and that's just all because of how this has been handled.
mm-hmm. And it's just Jerry Jones, man. Every single time you think the Cowboys are in a good spot, he finds a way to insert himself and bring the team down with him.
Yep. We'll jump now actually into the AFC South and NFC South previews. I know we mentioned last week we were going to do AFC and NFC North. With Steven out, it didn't feel right to talk about the NFC North without his Packers. So we called an audible. We did Omaha at the line of scrimmage. We're going with the AFC South. And what better team to start the AFC South preview with than the Houston Texans? Last year's surprise team of the entire NFL, the darlings of the AFC South, went 10-7, won the division, and now they're actually set to only have a 9.5 win total, which surprised me a little bit. They did bring in Stephon Diggs. I know that he's getting older, but I thought, David, 11-6 just jumped out the page at me. You have the defensive rookie of the year, the offensive rookie in the year. You add Danielle Hunter, who has had more than 10 sacks in 4 of his last 5 seasons played, and he's played in every game of those 4 seasons with the 10-plus sacks. I'm fired up for D'Amico Ryan's unit, and I think that we're going to get used to saying the Texans are division champs again. But unlike when we were doing that 10 years ago in the J.J. Watt years, it's not the Saturday 4:30 game, end of season, and wild card weekend that we're going to get used to. I think we're going to get more and more of a push from this organization. And who knows, maybe we'll be seeing them play in February sooner than later.
I really like the 11-6 mark as well. I would take the over. God, I'm going to regret saying this. I know I will. But, like, that division isn't tough. And I wouldn't be shocked to see them go undefeated in their division. But
wow.
I'm going to regret saying that because that division is also the one division that, you know, the Texans haven't beaten the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville since 1994. You know, I like...
They'll all go 3-3 in division just because that's what the AFC South does.
Right. And so, but, like, they have such a big gap in talent from every other team in that division. And it's not close in my eyes. It really isn't. That I wouldn't be surprised to the reason they hit 11-6 is because they run house in the division.
I struggle because we'll talk now a little bit about the Colts now, move to them, because I think that they, if things go right, could be a threat to the Texans. Last year they went 9-8 with a mostly Gardner Minshew-led team, but you're not going to have him backing up this year. It's going to be Joe Flacco. And we saw a flash in the pan with Joe Flacco, but you have to wonder, was it not just a flash in the pan? You can't depend on him as a backup. We saw what that looked like in Denver and New York. I don't like that situation. It's kind of a unique one to like the Browns, for instance, where if they won't clamor for Anthony Richardson to be pulled, but people will be excited about Joe Flacco, the backup. And I think that if that happens, and I think that it's probable, just because we have to have it proven us that Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. And until then, that's just a scary situation. I went 6-11 with the under, which is way low. That's 2.5 lower than the 8.5 they set. But I mean, you have Jonathan Taylor, who hasn't played in 12 games or broken 1,000 yards rushing his first, the last 2 years at least. This Colts are another one of those teams that, like last week we talked about with the Jets. I could see them winning 5 or 6 games. I could see them go on a crazy run if Anthony Richardson lives up to the hype and stays healthy and winning 11 or 12 games himself. I don't know what to make of this team. It's my least confident, I think, of all my picks today. But I went 6-11 and hammered the under.
Dude, this is a tough one. And by the way, comment of the year is Jonathan Taylor looking to play in 12 games and break the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in 3 years.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
my favorite note you've ever put in one of these rundowns. That
Like
is,
you've been hearing about him as if that he's like Barry Sanders or Emmett Smith or something. That we're like, I need $18 million a year, brother. I need you to play 18 games.
yeah. God, that's a comment. Anyways, I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, you said it. It could be 11 games. It could be 5 games. I I lean towards the under at like 7-10, 8-9. I just don't. I don't think they get to 9 wins again. I don't know why. I just have this like gut feeling that they get bullied this year.
They did add Leatu Latu, who many thought was the best defensive player in this draft. He just had a lot of health issues. He had that neck injury back in school that actually made him medically retire before they cleared him through another doctor. If you get him to play at the level that they believe he can, they might have got to steal the draft. And you pair that with one of the most high upside athletes in the draft in Adonai Mitchell, your Texas Longhorn. So if you do get a little bit of help there, it's not maybe a sexy wide receiver room, but it's a solid wide receiver room. In the way Anthony Richardson was able to sling the rock last year, if he, again, it's all about staying healthy. If Anthony Richardson stays healthy, the team has a shot. They're not going anywhere if he isn't. Trevor Lawrence's Jacksonville Jaguars went 9-8 last year. They started 8-3 and found a way to miss the playoffs after losing 5 of their last 6 games. Talk about another guy who can't stay on the football field. Trevor Lawrence signs that massive extension, and it makes me kind of think this is a make or break year. Maybe not in the sense that Trevor Lawrence, like, you're not going to play him anymore or anything like that. I'm saying if he's ever going to live up to it, we've been making excuses for this guy for 4 years. We can't keep doing it. When you are half a decade into the league, we have to see those traits. And he's had them for, 5-6 game stretches here and there? But then there's 10, 12 games where you're just like, what? Like, he just kind of looks like a decent quarterback. I went 9-8 in the over, barely by half a game. The total's 8.5. I just think they're a solid, maybe not even solid, like an average team that has way too high expectations every year right now.
Oh man, this is one where I really and I still haven't done my whole league. This is one where I wish I had played out every game of the season already because I don't know where to put them. I want to say they go 10-7 badly. Like I want to say they hit the over, but I'm not confident in it. Right? I'll take it because that's my like gut feeling right now is the over. I probably have them at 9-8, 10-7. I lean 10-7 because losing 5 of 6 to end your season just doesn't happen often, right? And I don't know, man. I think that's a little bit of a fluke, but I also don't think this team is a Super Bowl contender. Like I think they're good enough to make the playoffs, but they're never going to overcome the adversity.
And that's where the problem lies for me, because if there's one team in the AFC South that we're saying could win a Super Bowl this year, it's the Houston Texans. That makes it impossible for me to bet on any of these other 3 teams in the division because they're not Super Bowl threats.
Well, you know who's especially not a Super Bowl threat?
Oh, God.
The last team in the division, the Tennessee Titans. You know, went 6-11 last year, total set at 6.5. Buddy, I don't know where they get 6 wins from, let alone 7.
I know on paper they got better, right? But I'm kind of with you.
Their offensive line got better because they stole my god in Callahan, Bill Callahan, not the young Callahan.
Yeah, they stole both of them from the AFC North. That's a good point, though.
But you know, I know their offensive line will be better. That's a positive. I just don't know where else to like this team at all.
It's got to be Will Levis. If you are betting over 6.5, you're saying Will Levis is a quarterback in this league, and he might be. I just don't
pass.
I just don't have that gut feeling right now. I love bringing in J.C. Latham. With Peter Skoronski, they've invested back-to-back years very early in the first round. And you bring in Bill Callahan, like you said, all of a sudden, line should look a lot better. They have that two-headed, I don't even know if you want to call it a running back monster, but It's a fun platoon with Tony Pollard and my boy Tajay Spears. But they add Calvin Ridley too, so I guess like you can make a point that
Oh my God, I forgot about Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, so well, yeah, and Calvin Ridley notoriously bamboozled you and I last year into thinking he was gonna pop off and be like a
I was
top 10
sad.
receiver.
Big time
Didn't
sad
happen.
last year. Won't make that mistake again this year.
Yeah, well, but here, if you want to talk about like ads too, they signed L'Jarius Sneed, and he averaged 4.7 yards per pass attempt against, which was the best in the NFL for qualified corners. I just don't like the schedule. I don't like that they have to compete against 3 teams in a division that I think are all better than them. It wouldn't surprise me to see them go 1-5 in the division. If that's the case, I mean, all of a sudden you're fighting an uphill battle to get that win total. You would be having to go 7-6-ish to beat it, and I don't think that's even possible, or 7-5 even.
Those wins just don't exist. They don't exist.
I feel like a Titans hater year in and year out. There's just certain teams that you just unintentionally ride, and I feel like that's kind of what I've done with Tennessee. So maybe they prove me wrong. We'll be rooting for them. Well, some will. The NFC South, though, not maybe, my least favorite division in football. I won't even feel bad about saying that. That's
not even spicy. Ever since Drew Brees left, I have had negative interest in this division.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is that it's a lot of fun from a rivalry perspective. The Falcons and Saints, to me, have one of the best rivalries in the NFC, or in the NFL in general. But, like, the Buccaneers don't really move the needle for me. The Panthers are gross. But we'll start, I guess, with the most intriguing of the NFC South teams, and that being the Atlanta Falcons, especially given what they did this offseason. They went 7-10 last year, and their total has jumped up to 9.5. They brought in Kirk Cousins, an old man coming off an Achilles injury, which has historically never really been...
It's never gone well post-Achilles injury.
At that age, at quarterback, it doesn't. I think the best...
That age in general.
Oh, 100%. But like your uncle, ironically, is the only player that when I was doing research earlier at quarterback, when in his 30s, came back from an Achilles injury and was still good. And even with all due respect to Dan Marino, he wasn't the same player. And that's just the body. You can't overcome an Achilles injury in your 30s, especially in the modern NFL where you have to move around more. You weren't just sitting back there and throwing. I'm terrified. So maybe the Michael Penix draft pick ends up making more sense than we thought it did in the time. But I'm going with the under. But get a load of this, David. I have them going under 8-9 and winning the division because I just disrespect this division so much that I'm like, all right, we got another under 500 season coming here.
I don't know how has a team ever finished under 9 wins and won the division?
Yeah, I mean, it had to have, because I think there was like Seahawks team with like the Marshawn Lynch beast run mode when they beat Drew Brees and the Saints. I think they were a 7-9 division winner.
God damn. All right. Well,
very unlikely.
I am not betting that way. I will take the under, but 9-8 feels a little bit better than 8-9 division winners, and I'm not even confident they're the division winners.
Would you pick them right now at 9-8? Would you pick them to win it all? The
No.
NFC South, that is.
No, I'm leaning. The Baker ship was righted last year, and we're riding high. It's like a cigarette boat going 100 miles an hour in the ocean.
Baker, touchdown maker. We'll get to him shortly. We'll first stop with Bryce Young in Carolina. Keep pounding. They went 2-15 last year. Somehow, total is up to 5.5. Some people are actually buying into this team like a lot. I know I have coworkers that are very high on them just because they think that this is like a 7-ish win team that's going to see a lot of growth from Bryce Young. They invested in weapons for him, at least. Xavier Legette, the best accent in the history of the NFL, got drafted at the end of the first round, and then they followed it up with taking Jerry Jones's boy, Jonathan Brooks, the running back. And this is now all of a sudden a team. Well, they also Deontay Johnson. You almost forget about that too. But this is a team that brought in perhaps the most exciting offensive mind in this coaching cycle. Someone that you and I both at least like, because we saw what he did with Baker Mayfield last year in Tampa and what he did with Geno Smith the year before that. If someone's going to get the most out of Bryce Young, I like that they invested in Canales, and that's about as nice of anything I can say about Carolina these days.
Buddy, I don't know where you're getting 5 wins from.
Oh, yeah. Did I even say that? 5 and 12 under. My bad if I didn't. And if I did, ignore me. I'm literally half awake right now. I'm fighting for my life right now, David.
I just like, you write 5 and 12. I don't know where the 5 come from. You won 2 games last year, and we're relying on some rookies and Captain Drops a Lot and Deontay Johnson to build up Bryce Young.
It's the division. The division sucks. I think there's 2 or 3 division wins in there.
I know, but bro, I want, for the sake of your buddy, I want the Panthers to be better. But holy shit, 2 wins last year, and you still have the shittiest owner in maybe all of pro sports.
He's up
along with not that much different, right? Like I struggle giving them 4 wins, which is where I'm at 4 and 13.
Tepper be talking, baby. Shout out Dylan Watts. We love you. We hope that you survive the season.
Godspeed. I've been there. 0 and 16.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about 2 guys with teams and fan bases that get it, the Panthers are officially among the crew now. Like, welcome aboard.
Yeah.
The New Orleans Saints went 9 and 8 last year. It didn't feel like a 9 and 8 season, though. There was so much drama. This was a team that felt like they hated each other in the locker room, and nothing changed. Their total is set at 7.5. They did re-sign Pete Werner to a 3-year, $25 million deal, which is a great news deal for middle linebackers everywhere, like average middle linebackers. And then they add a couple, I guess, trending down rookies in Talise Fuaga and Kool-Aid McKinstry. I have them going under at 6 and 11. I am a big culture guy. I know it's such a played-out trope, but I think there is something to it. And Dennis Allen doesn't exactly give you the confidence that things are going to be better. Derek Carr, as much as I love him, the receivers hate him. His own receivers can't stand the guy. And after you get that preseason performance the other day out of Spencer Rattler, whether or not I think he's better than Derek Carr, I know how the NFL works and how NFL fans work, and I feel like Spencer Rattler will be clamored for if they start slow. And I don't think anybody's going to start fast in this division, so I think you're going to see him. And the last thing I'd say, David, before I throw it to you, team had 34 sacks last year, which was 4th fewest in the league. They brought Chase Young in. That could be one of those moves that we look back on at the end of the year and say, that was it. That was where they won the division right there. Or they could have just paid $13 million for a player that's never going to live up to the hype that he was drafted at. It kind of is starting to feel a little Jadeveon Clowney-esque.
So I'm sorry to distract us, but this, if you 34 sacks would have been for sure the fewest. Who had less?
Oh, you would shout out Evan Desker, the Atlanta Falcons fan. Teams like the Raiders and Falcons are so allergic to sacks that I think up until the Max Crosby days, I think I would have given you a toe to guarantee the Raiders got 34 sacks. Those are the kind of teams that would throw out 23, 24 sacks a year.
Arizona, Chicago, and Carolina. I mean, Carolina kind of makes sense.
Carolina. God, everything's down there.
Carolina,
and Brian Burns is gone.
Dude, Carolina only averaged 1.6 sacks per game. I'm sorry. It just blows my mind. And first, New Orleans is only averaging 2 based on last season. But that just when I oh God, that made me want to throw up. Anyways, that threw me off. I just
you're good.
When you see the number and you say 17 games, 2 sacks a game, that's so bad.
Well, and speaking of 2 sacks, Cam Jordan, who has been a staple in this defense for so long, who I'd have to dig into his numbers more, but he's one of those guys that is at least going to have that Hall of Fame bubble discussion. I don't know, just going off of gut without looking at numbers, I don't think he'll
doesn't feel right.
There. Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't feel right.
But he's very, very good. And the fact that he's at that point where he only had 2 sacks last year makes you feel worried that he's falling
Blech.
off. They're begging.
Oh my God.
They're begging Chase Young to even show us a little bit of what got him drafted number 2 overall a few years ago.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at this team. I'm taking the under for sure. I could see. I think I'm right there with you at 6-11. I could see 7-10, but 6-11 feels right. There's just nothing about this team that gets me off the ground. You know, there's just nothing there. And I loved the Saints during the Drew Brees days, just because I love Drew Brees as the player. But like, man, we are far, far, far away from those days.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that we were looking at the Saints as like a guaranteed spot in the divisional round for the better part of a decade. And now we're kind of just like, I mean,
Are they still buried in cap hell too?
I think they're just getting out of it, if not out of it now. So it should get better. The one thing I'd say is that once you move off of Dennis Allen at the end of this year, which you don't root against somebody losing or root for someone losing their job, but it feels like it might be the best. He's a defensive coordinator. He's a defensive coordinator. He's not a head coach.
Sometimes you're just a better coordinator than you are a head coach, and that's okay. You can still make great money doing it.
Yes. I mean, there are plenty of guys like that. I mean, the one that jumps out to me right away, and it's high praise. We're talking about one of the best defensive coordinators of all time. But Dick LeBeau was one of the best defensive coordinators ever, takes that job with the Bengals and looked overwhelmed. It was just like he was better at I'm going to focus on what I'm doing, and you guys focus on what you're doing. And that doesn't really work when you're a head coach and you actually have to delegate responsibility. But we'll go to the last team, our boy Baker Mayfield in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is without a doubt I don't want to bet this one, so I'm probably not, but I just have to tell you, I have the 6-11 record being for Tampa Bay, which is under by a game and a half. And I don't like that. It felt low when I finished it, but I don't look at the records until it's over. I mean, Baker had career highs in yards, touchdowns, and completion percentage last year, but he also had Dave Canales. So you have yet again another year where Baker Mayfield has constant change. And at some point, that's got to catch up to teams. They have a terrible interior offensive line. They're really praying that rookie guard Graham Barton steps in and makes a difference because they have good tackles, but they can't protect Baker Mayfield. They can't run the ball without an interior offensive line. I think it catches up to him this year. And unfortunately, I have Baker and the Creamsicles going 6-11.
I don't hate the take, but I think I have them at 9-8.
I would love that.
Again,
I would love that.
I don't think they're a phenomenal team, right? But if you told me they were at 9-8 and they won the division again at 9-8, it would make sense to me. I don't know, man. I'm just, the Baker ship is righted. I'm sure we'll be sinking and drowning again halfway through the season, but I'm here for it in the meantime.
I'm basically sacrificing myself for this, David. Me saying they're gonna suck. I'm praying that it doesn't.
But everything you're saying, it fits. It makes sense. But I'll be a Baker stan until the day he retires. So it's just a way to go.
And hey, if you're trying to find a reason to believe too, they did re-sign Mike Evans, who is looking for his 11th straight 1,000-yard season to start his career, which is absolutely banana lands to say. And Baker
with
and him
a like hot mix of quarterbacks. Yes. Like a hot mix of quarterbacks. Good and bad.
Yeah, the way we're talking about Baker Mayfield constantly having new play callers, new head coaches, new offensive coordinators, everything. It's no different from Mike Evans, but like the best do at their positions, Mike Evans continues to produce. And man, you know how hard it is to get me on this guy's a Hall of Famer train? And he's really won me over the last 3 or 4 years. I didn't think that it was sustainable.
It's a pillar of consistency.
That's it. And it's not even like consistency, peace and love. I hate that I keep going after Frank Gore. But it's like not even consistency where he's just like putting up solid years. He's consistently very good years. Maybe not elite years, but he's always that top 10 receiver. And if you're guaranteed top 10 every year, it's like, God, it's hard to keep a guy like that out of the hole.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of Loss It Down. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Loss It Down. and retweet us on Twitter at @down_loss. Make sure you're pounding that subscribe button on that YouTube page. We're trying to get more content out for you guys. Hopefully, with the season coming on, we'll have even more clips for you. But make sure you remember that this episode was brought to you by the wonderful Abby Turner Creative. Congratulations to her and Kyle Butson once again on their wedding. We're so happy for you guys. David, though, that's going to take us to the end. Do you have any final thoughts today for the people?
Go Browns.
Yeah, go Browns, because Brandon Ayuk, David, the trade talks here are exhausting me beyond comprehension. I just want it to be over. And what it's going to happen is it's not going to be over until the trade deadline. Can't you just feel that this is going to drag on? And then we have all these Browns, we have all these Steelers, we have all these insert team X, Y, and Z. They're going to trade for them. I can't wait until it's a team nobody in the world expects, and it just happens in like the middle of the night.
My favorite is that so the only thing I'm enjoying out of this is that it's exposing all these like beat writers who think they have sources or like lie about their sources, because like, you know, your boy Pony Express in Pittsburgh was I mean, he might as well have just exposed himself as Tony Grossi 2.0 in Pittsburgh, right? He just straight up lied and said that his sources told him that the Ayuk deal was like done and ready to roll. And then like a bunch of legitimately respected reporters came out and were like, that's just a lie. Like, that's just a lie, right? And like, that's the only thing I get joy out of, is like seeing all these, you know, fake beat writers try and like die on this hill and just be instantaneously stepped on and curb stomped by real respected people.
That's the thing, he's not even a beat writer. He's a sports
right. He's just
guy
a fucking
who, dude, he is. I'll give him credit. I will give Andrew Filipponi a lot of credit. He is polarizing. He is great for driving engagement. I had to mute him. I literally respect so much that he's able to get me to hate him, because I know it's a bit. I know it's who he is, like for the show, what his character is. But at the same point, I can't do it anymore. Everybody in Pittsburgh knows he's doing it for that reason, and we keep going back to the well. So I literally had to mute him. I'm done doing it. I'm done. I'm over it. Anyways, we'll be back next week for AFC and NFC North previews. David's Browns, Steven's Packers. I'm going to have to do a little bit of, Steelers, Bengals, Bears, Lions. I got to like stand up for all these teams. Otherwise, we know it ain't going to happen from you two. So, we love you guys, and we will see you a week from today.